At first glance, it seems like a relatively small issue. There's a small number of people with gender dysphoria and who would disagree that they should be treated with compassion and respect. But the problem came later on when how this was being discussed. At what point men could be categorized as women, and at whether somebody else had the right or didn't have a right to use pronouns. Was it it became transphobic to basically defend women's rights? And police were encouraged to see as a hate crime some basic statements of the obvious. Now, this really only came to me when I stumbled across a protest in Glasgow, where there was this campaigner, Posey Parker, who had gathered people in the middle of Glasgow Square to shout statements which people had been prosecuted for saying. Stuff like, women do not have a penis, and that rapist should not be in a women's prison. At the time, there was a rapist who'd called himself Isla and was all set to be sent to a women's prison in Scotland. Now, that struck me as something quite incredible there, because to me it seemed almost, at first I seemed this was social media, this was weird, this was a debate having in the fringes of politics. But gathered in that square, there were people young and old, there were nationalists, there were unionists, there were lots of feminists, there were lots of male feminists. There were gay women's groups who were standing by the definition, the importance to define a woman. And it seemed to me something was fundamental there. It was about language. It was about being able to speak freely. And again, it was something where the conservative sense of liberty ought to have fundamentally sided with those people, and it didn't. But the most spectacular example, of course, was Posey Parker's next trick when she came here in Melbourne. And this caused the biggest stushy, as we Scots like to say, of almost anything else, where we ended up with a conservative member of your state parliament attending this protest and being thrown out of the party as a result, simply for standing in a protest for defending women's rights. Thrown out of a party, by the way, by a conservative leader. So I think when you can see this sort of thing, a conservative leader expelling a conservative party for a rally attending women's rights, you can see it as an example of how the right did get this thing a little bit messed up.